not going to get a second chance in the game.
Let's go. Let's go Delta.
I just completed my 8th year as defensive coordinator at Maroa. I'll be telling you a little bit about our defensive principles, our alignment, our coverages, and I'll have some contact information if you'd like to contact me as well. So we'll just kind of dive right into some of our principles that we have. There's my contact information. You can text me, that's my cell phone, that's my school email. If you need that, just feel free to contact me if you have any questions. All right, so our defensive philosophy, which we've kind of preached over the years, would be, one, we fit our scheme to our kids. So depending on what kids we have, their talents, what they do well, we come up with the scheme to fit our kids. Depending on, I can tell you right now, we probably don't have a lot of defensive linemen coming back, and we always look at defensive linemen, linebackers, defensive backs, to kind of depend on what's going to put our kids in the best position. I feel like we do a good job of compromising really what's best for the kid and the team. So not necessarily I have a scheme that I'm going to stick with no matter what. I'll change it week to week, depending on who we're playing, whatever we need to do. So this last year we were fortunate. We had a lot of linemen we could rotate, defensive linemen. We could have won a 4 the whole time, but we ended up just rotating a 3, and this year we'll probably do the same thing. So some things that are obviously important that are kind of obvious, but coachability whenever you're on defense is very important. You can't give up big plays. They have to be coachable. They have to be able to make adjustments, all that good stuff. Another thing we look for is toughness. You can't be selfish. Obviously, speed and pursuit are important, and I'll go into a little bit of detail about some of these after this. And my philosophy is if you're going to be good at something, you have to practice it. So, for example, if you're going to be good tackling, you better be doing tackling almost every day. If you're going to have certain situations pop up and expect your kids to be good at that situation, you need to practice those situations. And then lastly, the big one for defensive coaches would be turnovers. If you want to be a team that has turnovers and creates turnovers, then you have to practice that and really put an emphasis on that if that's important to you and your program. And this year for us, it was a big improvement for us turnover-wise. So I'll kind of go into that a little bit. And then another thing that we focus on in practice, and this is offense, defense, everything, is everything's a competition. You want to make every drill a competition, every rep a competition where there's a winner and a loser. So that's important to us as well. Some things with competition I'll go over would be Mizzou, war, some goal line stuff that we talk about. And then lastly in our philosophy, it's really important for me to make sure that the kids understand why they're doing stuff a certain way. So I take a lot of time in the summer and early in the season to make sure we understand each individual spot and what our role is and what I expect from you. So I think that's a very important situation, like a very important thing to do with your kids is, why am I caving down on this? Why do I need to do this? And then they can kind of actually see why they have to do something as opposed to just being told this is what we need to happen. I think that's important for your kids to really understand why they're doing it and what it could possibly lead to. All right, so I'll get into a couple things that I hit on my philosophy, but very important for us is speed and pursuit. We're a small A school. We were 1A for a while, and we're 2A now. So we're normally not very big. This last year we were fortunate enough to be big and have some size, but we rely a lot on speed, strength, and then pursuing to the ball and kind of flying to the football as a team. We always say 11 hats to the ball. A couple things that we do is we do a pursuit drill once a week, and it's for 10 minutes, and every Wednesday the kids know the first thing we're going to do is a pursuit drill. I have it drawn down here, but I'll show that to you in a little bit. But our kids are basically trained to pursue the ball. We don't really have to coach it that much. It just naturally happens. It's just if you do something over and over again, the kids are going to naturally do it. And I feel like we pursue the ball, and that's one of our advantages. 4-second rule, anytime we're doing 11 on 11 on our defense, we have a 4-second rule. So after the play stops, all 11 kids have to be to the ball, or we do up down. So they have 4 seconds. We have a coach that blows a whistle when the play's dead, and then we have 4 seconds to get to the ball on that. Every once in a while we let a kid that maybe was man on a fade get out of that, but the 4-second rule really helps us get kids to the ball. And then for me, if I want our kids to pursue the ball, and that's going to be a big advantage for us, is getting to the ball, 11 kids to the ball. I play more zone than man. I feel like if our kids see what's going on and they've been taught well, they can adjust and and get to the ball and have 11 guys to the ball. So I listened to Grand Valley State's coach, talked about that. Made a lot of sense to me. We did it mostly zone, but he was always asked why his team always pursued the ball and flew to it, and he said because we never play man, all our 11 of our kids can see what's going on in front of us and react to the play. And that's very important because on offense, I coach receivers. Anytime they get locked up, we tell our receivers to run a guy off. And I feel like you can get big plays when you're in man offensively. So for us, we try to limit man unless we're doing a lot of blitzes or we're playing a team that doesn't throw the ball much. And then obviously if you're undersized, you better be able to run. For us, in the past, we've had kids on the defensive line that were 180 pounds and we're running a 3. But our advantage would be quickness and strength and speed as opposed to size. And that kind of, that could cause some fits as well for people. So that's kind of our speed and pursuit. I'll show you our pursuit drill here. We do it. Basically, you have 2 guys on the goal line, on the goal post, and you want to get your fastest kids that aren't starting on defense as your 2 rabbits, and then you have all 11 defenders out there that are 10 yards off the ball. Each rabbit is going to their sideline. The other team has to communicate and cross, and it just works on pursuit angles and getting kids to the ball. We do that all the time. Anytime we have little team camps with other schools, we have them do the same thing, and it's just interesting to see teams that are doing it for the first time and then watching our kids. I feel like our kids obviously have been trained to do it, so the other teams adjust a little bit. But that's a drill we do every Wednesday, and it's just pursuit drill. They cross, they have to communicate. The kids are smart enough to communicate, hey, this guy's faster than that guy, I'm going under, I'm going over. It just gets your kids talking. If all 11 kids don't touch the rabbit on each side, so they split half and half and go the other direction, then they come back and do another rep. And then if the kid doesn't get the person again, we sub. So we'll sub like our slow kids out. So if you're on first team, you'll get subbed for another kid that can run and do the pursuit drill. So that's a drill we do that I feel like is kind of a staple of our defense, and we do that every Wednesday. And then I think if you're going to be good at something, you definitely have to practice it. So one of the most important things for us is tackling. If you can tackle one-on-one, you're going to win a lot of games. And in a lot of our defense, you can do everything right up front, and it comes down to one kid getting a one-on-one tackle. And if you can't tackle a kid one-on-one, you're probably not going to win the game. So one-on-one tackling is important for us, so we practice it. Now, with all the concussions and all the rules being put in place, we rarely tackle to the ground, and we rarely go full go. So all our tackling stuff is with bags. I know I coach our linebackers, and we do tackling every time we do a fundo session. We're doing some type of form tackling. We also do what's called a turnover circuit, so that's another thing that leads to our turnovers. We try to emphasize that. So we have a turnover circuit where we incorporate tackling and our turnovers. There's 3 groups. It's 10 minutes. They each get about 3 minutes at each station, and they're working on tackling and doing the turnovers to put an emphasis on it. They rotate so they get to the same coach. You can mix that up, so I'll mix it up for a defensive lineman as opposed to a DB. So we'll do like a tackling turnover circuit on that, and I think that's helped us a lot. Anytime we do 11-on-11 defense, we say you have to get so many strips. So instead of wrapping up and thudding, we're not going to the ground, we'll wrap up, thud, and then somebody that's there is coming in and trying to strip the ball. And we had a couple kids this year that caused some big turnovers doing that just because we practice it. Anytime 11-on-11, you're trying to strip the ball from the scout team. And then it also helps the scout team because your backup running back's usually playing offense, and then they're also getting ball security as well. So, and then we added what's called the turnover belt. And I know Miami has a chain and all that, so we thought I'd come up with something, and I thought a belt would be funny and cool, and the kids would like it. So we went and we purchased a turnover belt online, and you can see it in there in the picture. But anytime a kid would get a turnover in a game, he'd come over and we'd have someone like a manager or something, he'd get the turnover belt and he'd get to wear it. And it's just one of those things where you kind of you get rewarded for getting the turnover. And I think the kids really, really liked it and it was cool. So, and honestly, our turnovers went up tremendously this year. We had a lot more fumble strips and a lot more interceptions than we have in the past. I don't want to say it's the belt, but it definitely doesn't hurt. Just giving your kids something to look forward to. They come off, they get the belt, they can wear it around or whatever. So we did that, and I thought it was a cool, exciting thing. I've had a lot of coaches contact me and ask where I got it, and they were going to come up with an idea. So I think a lot of people are trying to do the same thing as Miami did, which is what we got ours from. Also, one thing that I feel like as a coach I had to be better at was I'd be in a game, it'd be 3rd and long, and I'd just sub some kids in the game that I thought could get to the quarterback, and it could be our 2 running backs. I'd put them at end and tell them to get wide, and you're just rushing the passer. And I would just do that in the middle of the game, just spur of the moment. It's 3rd and 12, and I just put them in there. And I thought, well, maybe I should practice this. So now we do a lot more situations where we get the chains out. I just think it makes a big difference. We have a couple managers. We just get the chains out. We get a 1st down. We get a 3rd down. It's 3rd and 14. They can see it. We practice situations. 3rd and long is obviously big as a defensive coach. So we practice that. I'll sub personnel. I'll get my bigger run stoppers out, and I'll get my other kids in. I'll maybe have some crazy looks. We have the thing called Raven where nobody really lines up where they're going to go, and our kids love it. But we used to just do it. Now we practice it. So situations for us, 3rd and long is obviously different personnel groups. I can sub people. 4th and short, I want to get my bigger kids in there. And then goal line, you obviously need to go over goal line because we don't play a lot of man, but then when we get to the goal line, we do. So if you're not practicing that, then the kids are going to be confused in man principles on motion, all that kind of stuff. So for me, I think something that I've got better at is making sure that we practice the situations that our kids are going to be in instead of just you do 20 plays on scout team O versus your number 1D and then it's over. Put them in situations so they can actually think, because your coverage is going to change. Their mind's going to change. You're not going to jump a short route when it's 3rd and 12 as opposed to you might when it's 4th and 2. So you need to practice those, explain it, and so your kids have an idea so you're not coaching that up again after a big game that you wish you would have. And then competition-wise, Coach Joseph for us is the offensive coordinator. I'm the defensive coordinator. So we are very competitive. We want our kids to be competitive. We want our practices to be competitive. So there's 3 things that I'll mention here, and one of them is we call it war. And if there's any time that we would actually hit and go to the ground, this would be the only times really in a practice that we would do that. And it's the last 5 or 10 minutes of practice on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. And war would be basically, it's the end of practice. You've got your number 1 offense. They're on the 3-yard line, and then you take your next best 11 defenders. So it's a competition. So you just don't want to put out a scout team. You want to put out your best 11. So if you have kids that play defense, you're a bigger school, you could do your number 1O versus your number 1D. That would be great. We don't have that opportunity. So we get a mix, and the offense starts with the ball on the 3. And if they score, they move back to the 5. And if they score again, 10, 15, 20. And you can put a limit on it. But if the offense were to reach the 20 and score consecutively, the defensive team would run the rest of the 10 minutes. So we do hundreds. So if our offense were to score from the 3, they huddle up, score from the 5, 10, 15, 20 consecutively, our kids on defense would run. And then if the defense gets 3 consecutive stops, they would actually make the offense run. So the offense could pick up the one on the 3-yard line, and then on the 5-yard line, they get a shot, we get a stop. Now they're back to the 3-yard line. If the defense gets a stop again, now if they get another stop, that would be 3 consecutive stops in a row. The offense would run the rest of the practice to end the practice, and the other team gets to leave and celebrate. And we've only had that happen about 3 times either direction since I've been here, but it is nice to have that the consequence in the back because it gets a little more effort. That would be about one of the only times we would go to the ground in a practice, and that's what we call war. Another thing we do on Wednesdays, which I love, we added this year, we call it Mizzou. And we put the ball in the 20. You could go your number 1O or you could go your number 1D. Doesn't matter. And then one of them starting on the 20 going in. So they have to score. And basically, the kids that aren't in the game, they pick an offensive side or a defensive side. So if you're not in the top 22, you're either picking the defense is going to get a stop or the offense is going to score. And the loser of that would do up, downs, and stuff like that. But that's a really good way to start your practice off on a Wednesday. That's the first thing we do. We stretch, we warm up. I'm handing out the yellows for the defense or offense, whatever we're not doing that day. And then that's how you start practice, is a very good competition. Ball in the 20, can you stop them or not? So that's one thing we do that I feel like helps our kids and get our practice going. And then lastly, for me on the goal line, it's very important, but I don't want to kill kids, obviously, with the being physical and going to the ground and all that kind of stuff. So for us, we put the ball on the 6-yard line. Our number 1D's out there, and our scout team, they can do whatever they want. And then if we stop them, it goes to the 5. Even if we don't stop them, it moves down. So we go from the 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that just kind of gives us a couple different looks. Maybe if it's 4th and goal on the 6, we're in something different than 4th and 1. And then anytime the scout team scores on us, our kids are doing a consequence, like up, downs, or something like that. So that's 3 things we do competition-wise. that are big things for us that I feel help us kind of more get into a competitive part of practice and kind of see what kids are made of. So for me, I want to make sure my kids really understand what they're doing. I remember when I played corner and my coach would say, don't get beat deep. That was about the coaching, I feel like, to the extent of explaining things, was just don't let your guy behind you. And I want our kids to actually understand like what we expect out of each position. So I will send out something like this. I would just call it like a job description. This would be just like our forelook. And you would just, if you were thinking about being a corner or something, you could just look and say, okay, I need to know my coverage, communicate, be able to lock a single receiver, take pride in never getting beat deep, and you have to be smart and confident. And it just kind of gives a little job description of what each job is responsible for. Like if you're the nose guard, great, you're starting, but here's what your role is going to be. You're going to have to get double teamed. You're there to protect the linebackers, disrupt some pullers. You need to have a great motor and never quit. Do you feel like you would be a good nose guard? And it just kind of gives them a little idea of what we expect and kind of like a general job description. And I've handed this out before in the off season to kids that are coming back. They say that they set up their goals and they say, I want to start at strong side end. Okay, well, here's a little job description of what our strong side end would be. And it also identifies what we call things like Trojan is our outside linebacker to the strong side. Our drop is our safety, weak side safety, also comes down and plays outside linebacker. So it does give them an idea of how we use some of our verbiage as well. I'm not a big verbiage guy. I'll kind of get into that here in a minute, but I just have that name so when I put it on a sheet, they understand what that means. So here's the defensive practice time that I get. On Monday, it's mostly films. Our kids will come in, we'll do film for about an hour. We are cutting up mostly the game from Friday night. I've got defensive cut-ups, we've got offensive cut-ups, and then our special teams cut-ups. It might be anywhere from 5 to 20 plays depending on how it went. Sometimes I don't even cut up defense if I don't feel like there was anything that was real obvious that we needed to go over. So in everyone's fair game, like I have kids all the time that are like, did you put my thing in there? I know what I did wrong. Like they don't want their film to come up because they know there's a play that they really messed up. And what's cool about it is kids will come to me in the middle of a game and go, hey, I know I screwed that up, you know? And I just want them to know, like if your kids are understanding what they did wrong before you can even coach them up on what they're doing, I think you're doing a pretty good job. So that's kind of like my goal is I want them to actually coach themselves. I want them to come over and go, I know what I did wrong. Here's what I did. It won't happen again, as opposed to them just coming off and not having any idea of what they did wrong. So film is very big for us. We do it every Monday for about an hour. In the playoffs, it might even extend a little longer than that. We do a character coach that comes in. He talks about something not related to football whatsoever. He does that for about 15 minutes. We have like a theme of the week. We hand out our goal sheets, our scouting reports. We hand out our stickers for offense, defense, all that good stuff. And then we will go outside, and if coach has some formations that might be different or some basic concepts on offense, he'll do that. And then I always line up their formations and how we would line up versus our formations on Monday. So on Tuesday, I don't have to go over it again. And then on Tuesday, we get 15 minutes of defensive pass fundamentals. If we're playing a team that's strictly run, I will probably throw in more run fundamentals there. And then we do the 10-minute turnover circuit with 3 groups for 10 minutes. And then we go right into 7-on-7. A couple changes that we've done in 7-on-7. I usually go half and half so we get more reps and I can coach half and then verse half. And then what we do is sometimes our defensive linemen will be with us and they'll do one-on-ones because honestly I coach linebackers. I don't really get to see them in practice. I only get to see them in game film and all that, so I kind of get an idea of who's our best pass rushers at a given time, and then sometimes they go away. So we'll just have a center, a guard, and then a defensive guy rushing while we're doing 7-on-7. It puts a little pressure on the quarterback, and then it also, I can see what our defensive linemen look like versus our offense. And then I do half and half as much as I can because I feel like I can coach more that way and slow it down as opposed to trying to find 4 kids out there and line them up, so we're just half and half. And then we might do 5 minutes of showing their best run plays and how they block it. That's mostly for our scout team to understand, hey, this is how they block power, this is how they block whatever. And then we do 20 minutes of live defense. And our 20 minutes of live defense is never to the ground. It is always thud, 11 guys to the ball. That's where we do our 4-second rule. And we try to strip the ball on that. So that's our live defense. Mostly that's 15 minutes of our number ones and then 5 minutes of our number 2s on that. So, and then on Wednesday, we always start off our defensive drills with the 10 minutes of pursuit drill. We do as many groups as we can. So we usually have 3 groups. We have a varsity group, a number 2 group, and then usually our freshman, sophomore group. A bigger school, you could have 5 groups go one after another. But we do that for 10 minutes. And then we do our run fundos, and then 20 minutes of live defense. And then on Wednesday, we finish with our 6 live goal line plays from the 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and scores cost us. On Thursdays, most of the time our kids are in helmet. If they win, they don't have to wear shoulder pads on Thursdays. So most of the time, thankfully, we're in helmets. It's kind of a defensive walkthrough. That's where I'll go through our blitzes, which I'll get to in a second. Formation recognition, if I feel like we didn't line up correctly the previous 2 days. And then if we're playing a team that throws the ball a lot and I'm concerned, we'll do a little more 7-on-7, maybe at like a slower pace, just kind of walking through the routes. And then if we need to, we'll talk about our man principles or whatever we're going to do on goal line defense, who might be coming in and all that good stuff. So Thursday is pretty laid back for the defense, mostly because we're in helmets, but that's more of a mental day preparing for Friday. So that's just an example of our practice plan that we have there. So, okay, so this is what I make. I'm a computer teacher, so I have like Photoshop and all that stuff on my computer. And this is what I come in on Monday and I hand out to my defensive kids. Usually I print off about 25, so my first and second group definitely get it. And this shows the other team's formations, their numbers, and then I have where I have kids starting that week. So on Monday I have a good idea of who's going to be playing and who's not based on Friday and film. And then some things change, like if we're playing a power run team, I might take out a corner, bring in a linebacker. I want them to know that. I explain that to them. I think that's important. If you have a kid that normally would play and you're playing a different scheme team that you maybe won't use him as much, just let them know, hey, we're playing Athens this week. We're going to probably go 1 corner, 2 safeties. It's nothing you did wrong or whatever. I try to communicate that to the kids so when they see the sheet and they don't see their name up there, they have an idea of why they're not on there. But this is a sheet that I hand out to them. I'm not sure how much they look at it, but I do go over these same formations on Monday. And I think the kids really look at it to see who's starting where and all that good stuff. So that is what I hand out to them every Monday. And I expect them to look at it. And that's how I distinguish my first groups. Like, this is my first group this week. So when we do pursuit drill, that's my first group out. When we do 11-on-11, that's my first group out. And just want to show you that. Okay, so I'm going to kind of explain how I would explain this to my kids starting off. So if I had a freshman group coming in, when we do camps, I go through like every position with every kid. It does take a while. It takes up a lot of your time. You're not getting a lot of reps. It's more mental than that. But I think it's extremely important to make sure that your kids understand the basics of where you line up, what we expect from you, and all that good stuff. So we've been playing a 3-3 stack with 2 high safeties. So you could walk up with that drop and play a 3-5, cover 3, whatever, and I'll get into that later. But here's how I would explain it to my kids. I have 2 tackles and a nose guard. The tackle always lines up, head up of the tackle starting off. My nose would be head up of the center, and my other tackle would always be on the other tackle. And then my linebackers, starting off when I'm explaining it, I would have them directly behind the tackle, the nose, and the tackle. And I try to make it as simple as possible. So I feel like if I want my kids to play fast, know what they're doing, I need them understanding what they're doing so they're not thinking. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. So I number my everything from left to right. So my drop would be 1. If he was walked up as an outside backer, he's number 1. My stack backer on the left is number 2. My middle is always number 3. My 4 is my right stack backer, and then my 5 would be my outside linebacker. And I'll kind of get into that a little bit. But this is how we would line up, and then they would hear their call. So if I'm explaining this to a younger kid, just line up over the center. If you're the nose guard, just line up over the center and wait for me to tell you where you're going. My linebackers on the strong side are 4.5 to 5 yards back. And then my weak side linebacker would be about 3 to 4 yards. My Trojan would be about 2x2 of my tight end. He's my outside linebacker. My corner on the strong side would be about 7 yards off on average. My free safety over the Y, which would be the tight end, would be 10 to 12 yards. My corner on the other side, our rule is anytime we have a single receiver, we lock them. So our corner is always locked except for a drag. We would never chase a drag, and I'll get into that a little bit later. For our corners alignment, honestly, I prefer them to play off and keep everything in front. Some of the kids think they can come up and press. Again, I like them to see what's going on, and if I need them to come up and help the run, I'd rather them off reading and then go in man-to-man. That's just my preference. You could play cover 3, cover 2, or robber, and I'll explain all those in a minute. So right now, this is how my kids would line up if I were explaining this to my young kids. So moving on to the next one here. So this is how I would I go over my defensive line stunts. So again, I told you I'd try to keep it simple. So they're in a 3. So where they're lined up first, you're always over the tackle or the nose. So really, they're only responsible for the gap to the left or to the right of them. So if I said slant left, no matter what we had, they just go to the left. It could end up being weak or it could end up being strong. Normally, I will wait and see what the formation is, and I will call it. So slant left is as simple as my tackle has a gap to the left of the tackle he lined up on. My nose has a gap to the left of the center, and my other tackle would now be B gap because he's either B gap or C gap, and I told him left. My backers now know that they're responsible for the opposite. So I'm always telling the D lineman what they're doing, and then the backers are adjusting the gap over. So I would always have 6 in the box. So these are my calls. I just have a slant left, slant right, and out. So sometimes if I give 2 calls, I'll say out left or out right. The out is for the tackles, and the nose, I'm telling him what to do. So if I said out right, in this example here on my out, it's out left. So I'm telling the tackles their outside responsibility, and my nose guard is going to the left A gap. And then pinch would be the opposite. I'd be telling my tackles to go inside and my nose where he's going. So this would be a pinch right example. And that's how my defensive linemen are going. If people were to ask where they line up, inside shoulder, outside shoulder, if I have a smaller team, I would probably shoot them gaps and kind of be more of a slant team. This last year, I had 3 really good physical big kids. So I said just line up in that gap, control your gap, and read the guy in front of you. So you can kind of mix it up based on your personnel. Your nose might be a guy that gets double teamed because he's big, and you might have some smaller guys, or you might have 2 big guys and a nose. Just put your big guys in the gap and slant your nose wherever you want to go. So you have options based on whatever your team fits your team. This was the sizes of the 2016 team and then our 2018 team, just to kind of give you an idea. We're not dealing with Division I kids. We're not anything like that. We're playing a 3-down lineman. We're trying to get our kids to run. We've had, in 2016, our tackle was 5'10", 185. Our nose was 6 foot 198. We had a skinny, tall kid, 6'3", 188. And then this year we had a 6 foot 240, 6'1", 265, and 5'11", 220. So honestly, for me, there are things I would do different based on the personnel I have. If you have 3 big kids there, I would just sit them in the gap and let them control the gap and read. If you have some smaller kids that can't take on a big kid, well, then use their quickness and shoot the gap and see if you can cause some trouble and get some tackle for losses. So you can fit it based on your personnel and what you want to do. It might be big kids on run downs. It might be little kids on pass downs. That's kind of what I try to do. So this would be a random example. So I told you that I numbered everything left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I keep it as simple as possible. If I called out left, I'm telling my tackles are going outside, my nose is going left. My backers would know where they're going based on where they're lined up pre-snap, or they would just know that they're responsible. My backers are the opposite of the tackle's nose and the tackle. If the tackle's going left, my number 2 linebacker, right in this example, would be my Will. He's going inside. So the linebackers and defensive linemen, the linebackers are basing their blitz on where the defensive linemen aren't going. And it's only a 2-gap control. So my tackle's either going A or B or C, and my 2 backers only going C or B, depending on what the other guy's doing. So my random blitz example would be out left 24. I would literally just yell out left 24. They know they're going out left, and then my 2 and 4 is going. Now coverages might change on that, but that would be an example of a blitz. That's as simple as possible that I can make it. I don't name anything. I know a lot of people like bullet, lion, fire, tiger, whatever. I feel like for me, what is that? This is the easiest way I could do it. And I think, honestly, I don't have to spend a lot of time coaching it. We run the 3, but we switch into a 4 a lot. Or honestly, for me, I can be in a 4 anytime out of the 3 by just blitzing one linebacker. So my example, if I wanted to run a 4, but exactly, mix it up and just have a blitz coming instead of a defensive end standing there, I would just call like right 2. So right 2 would be a 4 for us. I'm just bringing one backer. You can see I have end, a 3, a nose, and an outside defensive end as well. So for me, I can mix in and out because really my concepts are exactly the same. The outside backer is more of my defensive end on the weak side, and then my bigger guy on the right is more of a run stopper because he has an outside backer to his outside. So those are some examples, right 2 and then out left 40. I'm really just in a 4 in that example. So that's kind of what we do. If I want to be in a 4, I'll just blitz one guy consistently over and over again. And sometimes I'll start off in a 4 and if I feel like it gives us an advantage. If I were teaching the 4, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but everything's the same except now my 2 interior linemen are based off the guards. So you have a 3 and a nose. They just need to know that. If not, they'll try to line up on the tackle because they've been doing it most of the time. So just make sure they understand that you're now over the guards. You're either gap right or gap left. That's how simple it is for us. If I called strong right, they would just call, if I called strong, right here would be to the right to the tight end. The tackle would be the B gap player, the nose would be the A, and then my backers would adjust to the gap that was not covered. Everything else would be the same alignment-wise for us. This would be an example of we're in a 3, but really I just want to be if I were to be in a 4, I would just call this. This would be a right 20 call. So my right tackle is now going outside. My nose is going to the right. My left tackle is going B gap, and then I'm just bringing the left stack backer. This is no different than being in a 4-2-5 for us. It just makes it maybe a little different for the team blocking scheme-wise, but that was a 3rd and long play. But I just wanted to give you an example of, for us, if you're in a 3, you can easily be in a 4 by just making a simple blitz. So this is just a right call, 40 or 20 for us, right 20. I'm just bringing 4. Nothing changes. If I was in a 4, he would just be lining up there to start. Coverage-wise, we play a lot of cover 2 against 2x2 since we're 2 high safeties. Just to make sure that our kids understand what they're looking at, I always number receivers 1, 2, 3 from outside in. So if I said, hey, what's number 1 doing or what's number 2 doing, our kids would understand, hey, I know what number 1 means, I know what number 2. Seems really simple and obvious, but sometimes I've coached kids and they're like, what does it mean you say I'm lining up over number 2? I haven't really went over it, so I make sure that my kids understand 1, 2, inside out. This would be our base. The strong side would be determined by 2 things. So my Trojan would set the strong side. If it was wide side and I didn't really feel like they had a really stud receiver, we would always go strong to the wide side. If they had a really, really stud receiver and the ball was remotely close to the middle of the field, we would probably go to the stud receiver side. So we would be strong with the Trojan over here, weak with the weak side linebacker over here. Rarely is the ball in the middle of the field, so you usually have a pretty definitive strong and weak side. So that's how our corners usually are 4 yards off, about a yard outside shoulder. Our safeties are 10 to 12 over number 2. My outside backer and the Trojan 1 here, we try to get away with as much as we can, bringing him into the box against the run until teams can continually do something outside. He's a hook curl guy, so he really doesn't need to be that wide anyway. So we are run first and then stop the pass. So that's how we would line up on that. This is just to show you what it looks like from a game film. This is just a team that's 2x2. Corner, this is our outside linebacker, our Trojan. They're on the left hash, so we would call strong right. The play really doesn't matter, but that's just how we would line up on a 2x2 set. All right, so these are some basic coverages. So I think it'd be a good idea for me to explain how I explain it to our kids. I feel like they understand cover 2. They understand what they're supposed to do. So these are basically some common routes that we would see versus cover 2. So if I was explaining this to my corner, he's 4 yards off and a yard outside. He has flat, obviously, in cover 2. If this guy runs a 5-yard out, he's going to respect it and adjust to it. But if that quarterback doesn't throw the ball right now, I say, If the quarterback doesn't throw it right now on his break, get depth. So that corner would respect the 5-yard out, knowing that if it's not thrown, he is coming off and getting depth. My safety is reading 2 to 1, so he's reading this 10-yard out. So if this 10-yard out is going to be 10 yards at him and he gets to him, he's basically going to man this kid because he's deep. So he's respecting number 2. The backer over here is reading, we tell him to get eyes to the most dangerous receiver to him. So in this case, the number 2 receiver is his most dangerous. So he's going to read, run, pass. He's going to fly back, get depth, and get right to number 2. If number 2 leaves, he knows he's responsible to get depth under number 1. So in this instance, my corner would freeze and see if they've thrown the ball on the 5-yard out. If he did, he'd jump up, try to make a play right away. If he doesn't throw the 5-yard out right now, he's getting underneath this 10-yard out. And this would be where we would get some interceptions because the 5-yard out, he's there, and then he freezes and gets depth. If your kid jumps the 5-yard out, we would throw the 10-yard out every time. So we teach our corners, if it's not thrown right now, get depth. Cover 2, we got a wheel route, so we've got a slant and a wheel. We tell our corners, number 1, you are riding number 1 until you see number 2. So in this instance, he'd be riding the slant, and then he'd see the shoot wheel coming at him. He would release the slant and get ahead of the wheel. So he would have a little bit of distance between the wheel and himself. So he would ride the slant. Number 2 comes out right now on a wheel. He would leave number 1, and he is basically locked on number 2. So once number 1 leaves his zone, he's basically locked on number 2 coming out of him. The safety is the opposite. The safety is respecting number 2, eyes on number 2. Once 2 runs that shoot, the wheel, he is zero responsibility for him. He would eye number 1 and basically lock him. So the safety's over number 2. He runs a wheel. He's no longer a deep threat for him. He is basically jumping, riding number 1. The backer would do the same thing. 2 leaves, he's getting underneath number 1. That's how we would do the wheel. A big one on cover 2 people will do double slants, and they'll try to hit the outside slant. It's probably one of the tougher ones to defend, but for us, we teach our corners to ride the hip until you see number 2. So in this instance, the corner would ride the slant the whole way because he never saw number 2. My safety, he would ride number 2 on the slant, and then once he goes inside, he would jump number 1. My backer on the inside, my outside backer, 2 goes inside of him, he gets underneath the slant on 1. Another big cover 2 route for us and how we would teach it is you get a stop or you get a hitch and you get a corner behind it. Our corner is taught, again, if they don't throw the hitch or stop right now, you get depth underneath the corner. My number 2 is being read by my safety, so once he goes deep, my safety's basically in his back hip. So I should have a corner underneath and a safety over the top on that corner route. And my backer's just trying to get hands on number 2 and maybe be laid out to number 1. Cover 2 beater, you got double verts. Again, my corners are taught, if you never see number 2, you ride number 1. So in this instance, corner should run with number 1 because he never sees number 2. And then my safety would get depth on number 2 and be able to play both if he does throw it late to my corner. And then the last example I have is just an out with a fade. Again, this is probably a very common route that they go. We teach our corners you cannot get beat outside because if they get beat outside, they have to turn and run. So they should be able to see this 5-yard out. So they would ride the fade out here. Number 2 breaks, he would come off a little late, and he should be there right when the ball is either caught or he has a chance to make a play. We tell our kids all the time, sometimes they're way too conservative on this. I want them to be able to pick up one of these balls off, every once in a while, so we have them be aggressive. Our safety sees the 5-yard out, and he is turned and getting to the fade as much depth as he can possibly get. Here would be an example for us of a out and a fade. I think our corner stayed with him a little too long, but if you see, we got a fade outside. Then number 2, he saw number 2, but he was late, but he ends up making a nice tackle. But again, we'll let teams throw the ball 4 to 5 yards and see if their coach will stick with it. So we always try to keep everything underneath this, but that's an example of a 20 pass in the cover 2. Again, he was a little late there, but he should be able to see number 2 the whole time. All right. Against trips teams, 3x1, we will most likely adjust to a quarter, half. Again, my rule on any single receiver is that we're going to lock it with our corner unless they run a drag. Again, we've numbered them 1, 2, 3. Number 2, the T in the backfield would be number 2, so our linebackers would have to know that's the number 2 receiver. And what we do is we will walk our corner up like he's playing a cover 2 look, and then he will bail, like a bail technique, and he's still reading 1 to 2. If 1 goes short, he's obviously getting depth. He's not jumping that. He's looking for 2 going deep. Our Trojan, we will adjust based on the teams we play. If they're a big bubble team or a quick screen team, he might widen a little bit, or if they're not, he might stay a little tighter. But he is flat, 2 to 1, just your basic cover 3 look there. So if H goes out, he's basically flying out there. If they don't throw it, he gets depth. Our free safety's lined up over number 3, and he's about 12 yards off. He's reading run pass, and he is basically like a cover 2 safety, reading the number 3 and number 2 receiver as if he would if they were twins. So my linebackers are always reading the closest receiver to them. We call it the most dangerous receiver. So in this case, my will backer here, my number 2, would read 3 to 2 and out. If 3 crosses face, as long as my middle backer wasn't blitzing, he would just let him go inside and then get out to a hook curl. My other backer on the outside is reading 2 to 1. Again, he's reading run pass. If 2 goes out, he would get depth and keep him in front of him. But that is basically how we would line up against a trips look, and that's our most common adjustment. That would be our base. We call it dollar. It's quarter, quarter, half, and then we lock the single. Here's an example of a trips look. Again, this is we're in a 3-3 stack. There's my Trojan, my corner. He's going to walk up like he's going to play more of a cover 2. My safety's over number 3, and it's deep, flat, deep hook curl, just like a cover 3 look, basically. That's just how we would line up on trips. Basic coverage-wise, again, now you've got your corners who've been jumping short routes the whole time. They have to understand they're the deep guy. So some basic common routes we see is like a flood route. We'll get fade, 5-yard out, 10-yard out. Every team runs it. We run it. Your corner would have to respect the fade and go. Your outside backer would jump number 2 and respect it. If the ball is not thrown, he gets depth automatically under the 10-yard out. Your safety is basically back hip man of the 3 because he's running a deep route at him. Your inside backer, your outside backer stacked, whoever's not blitzing, is reading most dangerous 3 to 2. So he would actually be late underneath number 3 here. He is flying out there. And I think that's really important if you're going to run, have successful pass defenses. Your backers have to get depth, and they have to understand who their most dangerous receiver is. I feel like our kids do a good job of that. We get a lot of depth, and we fly out to the guy right away. We don't wait. Another thing we'd see would be two hitches with the go. Obviously, our corner cannot jump the hitch. If he does, they're going to throw the go. So he would freeze for a slight second. If the quarterback doesn't throw it, obviously, he's getting depth on number 2. My outside backer is responsible for this guy on the hitch. My stack backer is getting as quickly as he can to the number 3 receiver on the hitch. We will see this the most. Teams will try to hit the number 3 receiver right now because our backer, and that's probably a weak spot in a 4 or a 3 as well. So we have to make sure that kids understand they're flying to number 3 if they can. I drew up what it would look like, what a lot of teams will try to do versus they'll run 3 verts on their trip side, and then they'll T-wheel. So that's really the rule why we have when we don't lock a drag. So if a drag is underneath, we would let the other backers take care of that, and my corner would come off. It would essentially look like a cover 2 there. My corner would not chase a drag. He would take the wheel, and then my safety would be getting depth for the number 3 receiver crossing the field. That's probably one of the biggest plays that teams try to do is a 3-vert, 4-vert against anybody, and it's really important on this backside. Corner runs here. Safety does not chase. Safety is responsible for this quarter. Backside safety knows that his 2 dangerous receivers are number 3 on the backside and number 1 on his side. Quarterback's eyes, you read it, you would have the number 3 receiver. And then last example that I drew up that's very common that we see is just a hook or a curl with the 5-yard out, and then maybe they'll try to run a deep route behind it like a corner or something. On this one, it's kind of tough, but we would tell our corners to get depth with the curl. Our backer would take the 5-yard out, and then our safety would turn and run with the corner. Our backside backer here is trying to get hands on number 3 and honestly get depth to the hook curl. I kind of have an example here of this exact play. this team motions over, so we go from blue to dollar, so that's our adjustment. Our safety will walk up, this other safety will bump over. So right now, my stack backer should be getting eyes on number 3 and seeing what he's doing. In this case, number 3's ran by him. He should start to get out to number 2 or number 3, and he does a good job getting hands on that ball on the hook curl. So again, we're deep, flat, deep, hook curl. Just a basic cover 3 look out of here. But it's so important for your inside backer to be able to fly out and find the most dangerous receiver in the hook curl, because that's where we pick on teams, I know, offensively. If you wanted to, we do have a look where we look to stay more cover 2. We would do this for teams that I don't feel like has a single receiver that's very good, or I feel like we need to have more guys in the box, but this would give you a chance to possibly keep 8 in the box. Maybe teams are spreading you out to run. Your drop moves more middle of the field, and you're really a cover 2 look over here. Your corner's up, your safety's over number 2 now instead of number 3, and we would run basically cover 2 principles here. Your corner would still run with number 1 if you never saw number 2. Your free safety would run with number 2 or 3 deep, and then this guy in the middle would take any deep crosser, and this would be where you want to make sure that your corner on the backside, he doesn't have as much help, that he is probably your best man corner. This year we had a little guy that was really good at cover 2 in zone, so he always went to the trip side, and then I had a taller kid that they couldn't throw the ball over very much, that played so that's an adjustment you can make if you wanted to go single receiver there. So that's our cover 2 look out of trips, and then the last one was more of a cover 3 quarters look. This would be what our cover 2 look looks like. The safety's more in the middle of the field. This guy's over number 2. Our stack backers reading run pass. I do this because if he can read run pass, he can get into the box without the slot ever blocking him. So really you're getting 7, 8 guys in the box against teams that are trying to spread you out and run the ball. This team, their quarterback was our best runner, so we stayed a lot of blue, which was what our blue look in trips is. But this is a good example of, if you watch my corner, he has a short route coming at him, he freezes, he doesn't throw it now, and then he gets depth. So your cover 2 corners have to be able to understand that you're going to give up the short stuff and make sure you don't get beat long. So if they don't throw it now, he's not throwing it. So that was a good job by our little corner there. Here's another example of what we tell our corners. I bet in practice, when we're doing 7-on-7, I'll say, Steve, did he throw it now? Then what do you do? And they always say, get depth. So every single time in practice, did they throw it now? Nope, then keep getting depth. This is a good example again. This is a corner route behind a short route. So number 21 over here on our corner, he's responsible for flat, deep, hook curl here, and then I have a safety in the middle of the field. There's a short route, he doesn't throw it now, and he gets depth and he gets underneath the corner. It's a good job because my safety was a little late. So that's what we teach you. That's probably one of the most important things of cover 2 is your corner. He can jump short routes if it's thrown, but if it's not, he just needs to get depth. You're just not guarding that guy because he's in the flat. Go help somebody else behind you, make it hard on the quarterback. Quarterbacks want to throw the ball deep. They don't want to throw short routes. Coaches, they don't want to throw the ball short. They want to throw the ball deep and move the ball. This would be our adjustment, or really it's not an adjustment, but this is how we would treat empty. We see empty a lot. We have a team that lines up primarily empty in our conference. What we'll do is we'll kind of play a 4 deep with 4 under. If their quarterback cannot run, you could probably get away with rushing 3 and dropping more. Or I would do the opposite. I would lock everybody, assuming my Trojan could lock. We are a smaller team with quicker kids, so usually our Trojan can. I know some teams play a really big outside linebacker, and in our defense, it's very important that we can have a kid that can play kind of a safety outside linebacker and come up against the run. You usually have about 1 or 2 kids that possibly fit that mold. That's more of a physical kid, safety type kid that can play that spot, but is able to lock. So. And again, you can adjust that based on if the Y is slower, he could guard the Y. It's up to you to come up with that. But then you could bring 6. So you have 6 in the box every time on teams that try to spread you out and run out of empty if they do have a running quarterback. So we'd be cover 2 over here, and we'd be more of a dollar look over here. One thing we coach on this is I tell my linebackers, if it's empty and you're a inside linebacker, anybody that crosses your face deep, you're running with. So for example, Teams will still run the 3 deep here, and they'll run a corner backside. Your Will or your Mike linebacker, right now, if this kid goes deep and crosses, you're locked on him. That's really the only way you can get away with that, because this free safety can't split both hashes, especially if this backside 2 runs a corner. This guy's probably going to go with that. So that's important for your backers to understand, and our backers did a really good job of that. But we had to slow it down and break it down and explain why we did it, because maybe our backside safety's not be able to help like he has in the past out of trips. So again, this is just an example of how we lined up. Again, we're 6 in the box. We're 6 in the box. We've got corner, outside linebacker, safeties over the top of number 3. We're stacked, and our safeties on the other top. So they're empty right. And we're playing more of a 4 deep. Safety's got to get out. So this backer should turn and find number 3 and run with him. He crosses his face, and we got an interception on that one, but I'm just more showing you how we lined up on here. All right, so there's another example of a empty look. Again, nothing's changed. In this instance, we're bringing a little more pressure, but this is how we would line up. We're bringing this backer here. There's my Trojan corner. You can't see safety, but we would basically play a cover 4. In this instance, we could lock and bring pressure. But again, my inside backer, if you watch here, this kid's the one he's reading. He's got to get to that kid and basically lock him if he runs a deep crossing route. And he does. He gets in his hip and turns his head and runs with him. And that's where the quarterback was looking to throw the ball. Just another empty look. Again, we're just playing a cover 4 on that, or we're bringing pressure. This is an adjustment we made. And our kids pick it up. It's pretty simple, but when we play an I team, which we don't see a lot, but we will see some shotgun 2-back pistols. My Trojan will always go to the strong side. Again, he's more of my can do it all. He can stop the run. He can help him flatten a pass, possibly drop back at safety. In this concept, we would not play cover 2 unless we were on the short side of the field, because I don't feel like my free safety can get to a fade route if they're spread out with the tight end. So we check to we call red, which is just a robber look, which automatically means both corners are locked on the single receivers. My free safety and my Trojan are responsible for my Y to back out. So for example, if the Y runs a flat route, my Y is locked on him, and my free safety can come help number 1 and rob him. That's what we call robber. And then if the Y goes deep, in a perfect world, my outside linebacker would get hands-on. My free safety is now locked on the tight end, and now my outside linebacker is getting flat to hook curl to help underneath my corner and checking for back out. So teams that like to run play action counter tray, Z's going to run off a fade, corner's going to go with him. The Y is going to run a 10-yard out. My free safety has the 10-yard out. The back squirts out late. My outside linebacker is sitting there waiting for him. If my outside linebacker reads run and comes up and gets sucked up, I still have a stack backer that is taking back out because he's flying out to hook curl on a run pass. So that's kind of our robber look. We do this versus teams that maybe will be in the gun, but they have a wing back here instead of a tight end. If I feel like our kids are communicate well enough that if the Y or the number 2 receivers too far inside to where we don't feel like we could get to a fade, we would just check to red robber, and that would be our adjustment. Here's an example of a team. We're in robber. They're in just pro I right. Number 1 receiver out here is locked on number 1. My outside linebacker would have flat to back out lock, and then my free safety would have tight end deep. In this instance, the tight end sits, so my free safety knows he can help number 1. He blocks. He's flying to number 1 to help. It's a fade, and he's able to help out my corner on the backside. Yep. So if this tight end were to go deep, my safety would have to respect that, and my outside linebacker would be able to help on number 1. So they just have to communicate. One's got short route, one's got deep route. We just call it red robber. It's really simple, and I think it helps us a lot with teams that are spreading you out with the tight end and the split, running play action. All right, so I'll get into a little bit more of like what we go over with our base run reads. So that was a lot of covered stuff. But one thing that's important to understand is like to rep how you're going to get blocked. So I tell my kids, you have a job that you have to do, and you're reading one guy. So our ends, our defensive ends, are our guys that are controlling outside. If you're basically outside the tackle, you're reading the tackle first. That goes for a defensive end, an outside linebacker, a corner, or a safety. You are reading the tackle. If he down blocks, you know, the play's coming at you. If he base blocks and all that good stuff. So they know they are looking at a guy, and they're responsible to look at a guy. My backers and my nose is obviously reading the guard in front of them or the center. And I feel like anytime we struggle and teams are moving the ball running, I just yell, make sure you're reading the guy in front of you, or read your guards to our linebackers, and it helps because they get in the habit of reading the backfield when the lineman's going to show you exactly where they're going. So we teach everything run-wise that you're reading, you're doing your job. So you have your own job. Your defensive end is reading the tackle. He's going to do one or two things. He's going to block you out like a base block, and they're going to run lead at you. He's going to down block, and then you have some possibilities, a power counter, or he's reading you, or he's going to edge block you. So essentially, you're going to see about 3 different run blocks at you. Can you handle and identify those 3 run blocks? So in practice and fundamentals, we split up middle linebackers, outside linebackers, defensive end kids, our interior kids, and sometimes we just spend 10 minutes and all they're getting is those same reads over and over again because we want them to actually read the guy and use their hands and get on those. So these are just some basics that I would go over with my kids. If you're getting a base block and a team runs lead at you, you're playing a team of 2-back or a quarterback that runs the ball out of shotgun. My defensive end, we would tell them to hold the ground and keep your outside shoulder on a base block. My nose, again, you're trying to hold your ground, not get driven off the ball, get double teamed if you're that good. And then my backers, once they see a down block and a base block, they are flying up right now and taking on fullback. We teach our backers to attack the outside shoulder to force it back where there's more help. And then what's really, really big for us is our safeties have to come practice with our linebackers and understand the read blocks as well. So they always love it when I say I need the safeties because they don't have to go over and run and do all their DB drills. But they're reading the same exact stuff. So they got to know on a base block, they're trying to run inside. I'm playing inside out, and I'm possibly reading for a late bounce. So on our base blocks, it's got to be right now. You got to hold your ground at an end, you got to hold your ground at nose, and your backers got to go right now. You can't watch. I would tell my kids I would rather you play downhill and be wrong than watch and be right. And that goes for my safeties and my backers. Again, though, you are taking a chance at play action, but again, if your safeties are reading the linemen the correct way, they'll know what a run is and they'll know what a pass is if you rep it. And then on our edge blocks, again, we emphasize that you have to do your job. So our Trojan knows no matter what, anything that's going to the edge, he's got to get to the outside shoulder. And we tell him not to run upfield because that's going to create a gap for a cutback. We tell him to keep outside shoulder and see how long he can stretch it out. He knows most likely he's not going to make the tackle. So this goes back to being unselfish. Is you're probably going to make the play most of the time, but you're not going to make the tackle. And this is probably one of the biggest things. Obviously, you don't want your team getting outside. He knows what his job is. So he's going to attack outside shoulder, stretch out, flat. If he can get penetration with some help and force that back, cut back, that's fine. But if he goes too far upfield, the kid's going to have a lane to cut back. So our safety is taught to go inside out. So he knows that if the guy gets outside, it's our Trojan's fault. It's not his. So he is playing inside out, and our Trojan's holding the outside edge, and he knows he can play inside out. My end on the strong side, he's just basically trying to get penetration and force that kid around him. He's not necessarily the kid that's in charge of the outside contain. It'd be nice if he could, but mostly he's our bigger kid in there to stop power and stuff like that. And then what's really important is we've taught these kids to pursue the ball like crazy, turn and sprint like crazies, but then now you're trying to get your linebackers to go read sweep, and now you're inside shoulder out. So sometimes what we're at fault is we over pursue things. So it's really important on sweeps. We tell our linebackers you're inside out because if your outside backer does his job, he's going to cut back to you or he's going to have to shuffle. So another problem we have is like our backside knows this is like you're never going to make the play on sweep. So, but the thing is, don't run upfield and take yourself out. You be late down the line of scrimmage just in case he does cut back really late, or you get a reverse, you're not flying upfield, taking yourself out of the play. So I have a couple examples of just some plays here that are really basic plays, but we do a fairly good job on it. But again, we've repped this individually Like our interior linemen are getting worked on getting down blocked. Our defensive ends are working on base blocks, getting hands-on, holding your ground. Our backers have read all week in fundamentals. Base blocks I'm flying right now. And then my safety, my outside linebackers also reading the tackle. So on this one, they're a very good run team. And this is just an example of lead. And I can kind of break it down what's good and what's bad here. So right now, we got a pretty simple base block. The tackle's going to base out. This defensive end over here is going to hold his ground, get hands-on, and try to cave this down a little bit, but don't run upfield because that'll create a bigger hole. And also, you have to keep your outside shoulder there. He knows he has an outside backer, so it would be nice if he late cross face here. My nose guard was a little late off the ball, a little tall. He's a bigger kid, but his job is just to hold the ground. But my backer reads it right now. He's got a down block and a base block. He goes right now. He's about 175 pounds. But as long as you feel right now and you're aggressive, that's all you got to do. And then my outside linebackers read that. He's caving down. And then my safety's inside out. And that's just a generic base block on an ISO play. Seems pretty simple, but your kids have to do things right if that play is not going to go for 7 yards a pop. This is an example of jet where I'll show you kind of how we over pursue things, but my middle backers are inside out. So I'll give you the view on this one here. So sometimes I feel like on the edge, our outside backers will fly too far out too quick where we don't really stretch it out. In this case, I feel like we do that, but both my inside backers are playing inside out and my safety should be playing inside out. So you can see 51 and 14 do a good job of not over pursuing. They're more downhill, inside out, and then this kid cuts back. And if you're reading, our kids are reading. So you've got this perfect play drawn up to get to this kid with this kid. But if you're reading and your linebackers aren't watching the backfield, they know on an edge block they're flying right downhill right now. There's no way they should get touched. There's no way this kid, backside guard, should get to this linebacker if he reads fast and plays downhill. There's no way that tackle's getting to him ever unless he's standing there watching. So we take a lot of pride in that. And this is a good example of they kill our outside linebacker. So this is our Trojan. We're playing a 4. He should be setting the edge. My strong side end should be getting penetration, and then my safety should be inside out. My safety does a good job here of making up for my outside backer getting drilled, but he's downhill right now inside out. And that should have been a better play. But nobody's blocking our safety. He's got to come up, read, run, and that was a good play by him. You see it from the backside here. Number 62 will never make this play, but he does do a good job of stretching it out, even though his responsibility is really to kind of get more penetration. But that's just you have to have solid safeties. We play our best tacklers probably at safety that are our skill kids. And then the last couple things that we do here is I feel like team's best play is power and counter, and you've got to be able to stop those. So how we teach this is you might be responsible for C gap. So whatever gap you're responsible for on any down block you get, you are now replacing down that gap. So for example, in this one, I've got a left call, and this tackle down blocks. So my end was a C gap player to begin with. When he gets a down block, he is caving all the way down to B gap, down the line of scrimmage. In a perfect world, he's getting hands on. We tell him to try to touch him. So when he tries to touch him, he doesn't run upfield, he gets down. And then he is taking on, you know you're going to get something coming back to you. So he has now went from a C gap player to a B gap player. My backer on this side is lined up in B gap, but when he sees this down block, he is now scraping to the outside right now. So we're replacing gaps. So we started off CB, we now replace it. Cave that down, blow it up, and then our backer scraping to the outside. It'd be great if our nose guard gets double teamed, but even if he doesn't, I just want him not to get moved. So if he doesn't get moved, boom, we're happy. Again, my safety is just as important as my backers. They're reading the same thing. I tell my safeties, if you see a down block, where's the ball going? It's probably going to the outside. So he is flying downhill to the C gap. So if they do a good job and this kid bounces it, again, it comes back to one-on-one tackles with my safety. My backside linebacker is reading the guard in front of him. He sees a puller. He is right down the line here, cut back, scraping if he needs to. So he is attacking right now as well. This is where you can get in trouble. Your backside guys, they can't run upfield and get back blocked. They have to stay on the line of scrimmage and work back down. My outside linebackers over here, I tell them, is it a reverse? You're never going to make a play on the other side. If you do, we're not going to win anyway. So stay home, shuffle late down the line of scrimmage. My backside safety, he's reading the tackle. That tackle and guard pull the other direction. He is now replacing my backers that are flying to the pullers, just in case that back squirts back out inside or cuts back and we're not there. So this is how we would go over a down block on a counter read. Similar to power, you're still going to get a pulling guard and a down block and a kick out. And this is honestly, I feel like teams don't consistently run counter or power against us, and that's their best play. So if you can take away those, but again, it's got to be each guy doing their job, reading exactly what's in front of them. This is how we would go over it. It would be literally have your scout team go down. Why are you doing this? Your job's double team so this kid doesn't get blocked. So they know like what their role is and why they're doing it. This is power. They're going to kick out our outside linebacker and try to block our 3 technique. So I've got a left call on our 3. He does a poor job of getting hands-on down, but he does do a good job of taking this on. My backers fill and scrape. This is just an example of a power play. I would like to see him. He steps out. He's a little late, but everyone's downhill right now. Nobody's watching. Another example here, we're more in a gun. I think this is counter right. What I really like about our 3, we played a 3-4 against them, which essentially it would just be like a right call for us in our 3-3. But if we learn that if you line up head up on these kids here, they're going to leave you. If you have an outside backer to your side, we tell our tackles, if you have an outside backer to your side, you're chasing every puller. So if you should know right now, communicate. You have help or you don't. If you don't have help, you can't chase, you have quarterback. If you do have help, chase down the line of scrimmage and make this play. Get a tackle for a loss. And in this case, there's no way this center is going to back block him, but he is responsible for B gap here from the start. So he knows he caves down, he can chase. He's going to get a late tackle there. On the backside, we're caving down, replacing. So you can see his job and his job replaces or changes. If I go back to here, sorry. He's going to cave down, take B gap. He's going to replace scrape outside. This kid should be downhill out. This kid should be shuffling down to quarterback. He runs a little bit too far upfield. But again, down, replace your B gap. Now he's going to try to kick it out to C gap. And it's right now. You can't wait. We tell our kids, you cannot wait. You have to go right now. Another example of them not blocking the last down lineman over here. He's chasing. Our kids are going right now. They're not waiting. Can't watch. Tell them you can't watch if you're going to play linebacker. 14 kind of gets confused, but at least he's confused downhill and he's not watching standing still. I'll give you a couple more examples of here. Nothing crazy. We're not big D1 hit kids, but get to your spot right now. Nowhere for that kid to run. And a lot of that is just you can't run upfield. 84 runs way too far upfield for me. He should be right down the line. He's blitzing. I get a left call. He should be right down the line of scrimmage here. He runs up. If 62 would have got blocked, there's a hole there. So that's a young sophomore kid at the beginning of the year playing for us. He's got to read the tackle. So we tell our kids, even on blitzes, you're reading what's in front of you. He should be reading that tackle. His eyes are in the backfield the whole time. That's not a great job by him. All right, this is another example of counter. This time we're in a 4. On a 4, it's really important for us. We have a backside safety. We don't have an outside backer. So one, this guy would know he can't chase on pullers. But now the safety really has to read this on the weak side. So this defensive end's got to cave down, blow it up. Backer's got to scrape outside, and then safety's got to read it just like a linebacker. So he should be looking at my guard tackle right now. And we'll see how fast he is. But if that kid bounces, our defensive end makes a great play there. But if he doesn't, I should have a one-on-one chance with my safety. And again, it all comes back to you've got to make one-on-one tackles. But But counter works when you stand and watch on defense. It doesn't work that well when you've caved down and you come right now. It's tough. And again, that's the difference between watching the backfield and watching what's in front of you. All right, that's just kind of some basic ways we go over things for Maroa-Forsyth and our defense principles. Hopefully you got something out of that. If you didn't and you want to know more specific things, feel free to contact me. There's my cell phone number. There's my school email. I will answer back. I will do whatever I can. I can be more specific with whatever you'd like. But that is a presentation for Defensive Coordinator Jon Kidd from Maroa-Forsyth High School. Thank you.